Hey everybody, I'm Elise Wang, and in today's video I'm sharing a time-lapse video along with commentary on how I sketched this lion. If you are new to sketching and you'd like to give it a try, I have a playlist of tutorials on how I sketch, and I'll leave it in the pop-up card in the top right hand corner so you can go check that out. It comes to no surprise, I love animals, and big cats are no exceptions. I wanted to give a powerful portrait on what is scarier than a lion looking at you hungrily. And without further ado, hope you enjoy. The paper for this sketch is fairly big. It was size A2, and because of how big it is, I have to tape it to the easel using masking tape. It is very important to use masking tape instead of cellophane tape because cellophane tape can be very strong. So when you take it out, it may even tear the surface of the paper with it. Masking tape is very nice in the sense that it's not super sticky. However, it keeps peeling off, so I always have to keep pressing the masking tape onto the easel again just to make sure everything stays put, or else the paper will start falling off. I always like to start with the eyes because it's the first thing that we always notice on every living being. It's the windows to the soul. And I always like to start with the eyes because I think it's a good gauge, at least for me. This is how I usually work in. And I am not afraid to go very dark on the eyes. I like to go super dark. If you notice how I sketch, I like to go for the really darkest parts. If I recognize in the reference photo which part will be the darkest, I will start with that first. And it's always very easy when you start with the eyes. I like to spend a lot of time on the eyes to give it a sense of realism, and that's where the gauge comes in. I like to make sure there's enough reflection. For this particular reference photo, the eyes was very reflective, something that I have never really tried with eyes before. So there was a lot of patterns in it, in the reflection in the irises, and that really took me a while, and it was really interesting to try all those kinds of patterns. What I would do is I would shade the surrounding areas and I would compare that with the eyes to see whether it is up to par. I would compare it in terms of contrast, lighting, and realism. The thing about having eyes, especially when this is a close-up portrait, the eyes are the ones that are supposed to really engage your audience, and the main attraction is supposed to be at the center of the portrait. Depending on how you work, the surrounding areas may not even need to be that detailed around the edges as compared to the center of it. So if you don't want to work that much, you can actually afford to not put in so much effort on the rest of the artwork, depending on how you want to approach it. Because some can argue that they do not want the viewer's attention to be distracted by other elements of the artwork. Say, like the details of the fur can maybe distract the viewer from looking at the eyes, for example. So it really depends how you want to approach your artwork and create your own workflow. For sketching fur, I found what really works for me is to actually learn how to break down complicating subjects into simple steps. What I usually do is that I would block in the shadows, midtones, and highlights, so I don't put in any form of details then. I will just color the surrounding area with a suitable shade of pencil, and just to work out roughly how it'll look, and then I will blend it with a blender just to smoothen everything out, smoothen the shading. And at this point, When I feel that the lighting is somewhat accurate, that's when I start putting in the details. And it can be depending on how small or big your piece is. If it is a little bit bigger, I would normally just use a pencil. But if it's smaller, I would use a mechanical pencil because the finer lines it is. And the smaller it is, it's harder to see from afar. So there is definitely a planning process before I do every artwork. It's not something that I just put on a piece of paper or a canvas and say, okay, I'm just going to copy everything. No, there is a total breakdown of what it is I need to do, what tools to prepare, how am I going to execute it. There's a lot of planning involved, and especially when it's something that, realism, I tend to think about it way more than, for example, if I were to do abstract or impressionism. And honestly, it's just a rinse and repeat kind of process. When it comes to fur, there really isn't much to it when I'm sketching. It's just shading the area, then I put down a layer, a bunch of lines emanating fur. Just rinse and repeat everywhere else. It's the same in that regard. So most of it comes from planning. And after that is just a very, very repetitive process. Usually for the places that are highlights, if they're white, I try not to touch it. There is always an eraser if I mess up, but if I had a choice, I would try my best to not touch an eraser because the whites of the paper is pure. Sometimes if, for example, you put down a shading that is way too dark, an eraser can't always save you. For that, I really try not to touch it when the highlights are really, really bright. It is a big piece, and this piece took me quite a while to finish it. But when it comes to art, I feel that you shouldn't focus so much on how fast you do something, especially when it comes to practice. Then all that matters is that you learn something from it, no matter how fast or short it took. After every new painting, you will learn a lot. And I like that. I like the feeling when you learn something new, you feel this emotion of euphoria that makes you feel so excited that you just want to use whatever knowledge you learn for the next piece. And I find that very, very exciting. Makes me want to experiment even more. And I look at each piece as a piece to learn from. It is a challenge as well, and of course there are times where I do not take it lightly and I would beat myself up for it. But for the most part, I try not to think so much of all the negative effects. In fact, I would try to focus on all the beneficial things that each piece will bring to me. Because of that, I just look forward to painting more each time. The mane was very tricky because there was a lot of hair involved. So I tried to do my same routine where I try to put down the darkest and then I will go over it with finer lines. Bear in mind that the part where I only put the darkest lines, I only use it when I am totally confident that the painting or artwork requires it. If I do not feel confident, then I would usually start with lighter tones and then only slowly build it up to the dark. As I said before, once you put into dark, sometimes erasers can't always save you. And for that, I will only put the darkest dark when I'm totally confident in that choice and I won't need anything to rescue me. So for the hair, the mane, I would put the darkest dark where I'm comfortable. And then I would slowly work my way with lighter tones, starting with 2B. And then I will bring in darker tones to have that wave that nice silky wave for the hair, even though it's a wild animal. If you are new to sketching, I wouldn't recommend that you try on such a big piece of paper. I would recommend that you start off really small, say A5 size, then move on to A4, A3. I mean, if you ever want to do big pieces. Personally, I don't really like big pieces because there's so much details to consider, especially when you go into realism. If you are new to sketching but you like to give it a try, I do have a playlist that I do, Intro to Sketching, which you can check that out, and hopefully it will help you in your journey for art. So you can see how I work my way around the chin. Again, the chin is where the highlights is because the fur is white around that area, and because of that, I try not to touch that area at all. Of course, it is quite expected to have smudges depending on how you work around your artwork, but usually all those are not so in the way. You can easily remove them with eraser. I will sometimes use a piece of paper to put it under my palm. However, it is quite difficult considering that the artwork is in a vertical position. So that's why I opted for my artist glove. However, it doesn't really do such great of a job, unfortunately. You can see as I sketch, I go a little bit here and there. I don't really go so much in one direction. I would move from places to place, like I was halfway doing my main, but then I would work on the details a little bit on the eye around that area. So I don't really move in one direction. I just feel I should go here to touch it up over there, and then I'll move back to the main part. So you can see I'm putting down the lines, and I wasn't too confident on this, so you can see that I'm actually building it from the light side as I build it up darker and darker. That is all for today. If you like my videos, it would help if you hit that like and subscribe button and share it to your friends who you might think might find it helpful. I share videos, tutorials, and reference photos for free for artists to use. If you'd like to support me and make all of this sustainable, you can do so by pledging over at Patreon. And thank you to my patrons over at Patreon. Over the years, it means so much that you guys have contributed all this time. Thank you. You can also join my Discord server as I'm trying to create a wholesome community, and you can also get notified where I'll be going live on Twitch. I paint things in real time, and you can always ask me questions there. All links are down below in the video description. That's all for today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!